logging in on Zoom, but she doesn't have a speaker on her computer, so she's calling in. So I guess it shows two.
Okay, Chairman, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you. Okay, the meeting of the Planning Commission and Airport Zoning Commission for April 15th, 2020 are called to order concurrently at 6:10 p.m. Pursuant to Executive Order N-25-20 and N-29-20, members of the Planning Commission and staff are participating in this meeting via video link, Zoom, and/or teleconference. This is not an in-person meeting. Members of the public may observe this meeting on the City of Hawthorne website or on YouTube. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And I'm going to ask Commissioner Ortiz if he would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
It would be my pleasure.
Thank you.
Okay, everyone, hand over your hearts and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Secretary, could we have roll call, please?
Thank you, Chairperson Smith. Chairperson Smith?
Present.
Vice Chairperson Ostrinoble?
Present.
Commissioner Ortiz?
Present.
Commissioner Caraveo?
Present.
And Commissioner Richard?
Present.
Okay, everyone is present. Thank you.
Thank you. Oral communications. This is the time for oral communications. Because this meeting is not an in-person meeting, members of the public who wish to participate in the meeting were asked to participate by calling or emailing the Planning Department no later than 5:30 p.m. today, noting the item on which the member wants to speak. This information was provided on the agenda posted in compliance with the Brown Act on Friday, April 10, 2020. At this time, if there were any messages left for oral communication, staff will call the public member, place them on speakerphone, or read those messages for those individuals that provided written comments. Remarks are still limited to 3 minutes in duration. Staff, is there any participation from the public for oral communications?
Chairperson Smith, we did not receive any messages.
Okay. This would be the time for the public to address the Planning Commission and the Airport Commission. So we will move on to the Planning Commission and Airport Zoning Commission consent calendar. There are no items. We'll recess the Airport Zoning Commission and the Planning Commission consent calendar. Are there any items? There are no items. Continued public hearings. There are no items. New public hearings. Zone Text Amendment 2019 ZA05. Now is the time and place to open the public hearing to consider Zone Text Amendment number 2019 ZA05. Senior Planner Maria Majek will present a staff report. Are you there?
She's on. She might be muted. Let's see. That's strange.
I think she's muted.
She might be muted, and I don't see her on right now. That's kind of strange. Let's see. Oh, no, there she is. The number's there, but she is muted. There, I think she's unmuted now.
Ah,
Okay.
okay.
There you are.
Let me begin. Everyone can hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Good evening, Commissioners. Thank you. I will be presenting Zone Text Amendment 2019 ZA05, which is an amendment to the prior short-term rental ordinance that the City Council had approved per your recommendation. This new amendment will add a definition for a secondary residence. as a dwelling not occupied by the owner as their primary residence, but owned by a person who actually is a resident of the city of Hawthorne. And by doing that, we will allow secondary residences owned by a resident of Hawthorne to use it as a rental for an unlimited amount of time. As you recall, we have a vacation rental definition, which we are only allowing 90 days per year, and that still will remain for those property owners who do not reside within the city of Hawthorne. So they still have a limitation of 90 days per year. So by adding the new definition, we are allowing our residences a little bit more flexibility and allowing them to increase an opportunity for them to increase their revenue and therefore allow the economic growth of the city as well. When the city council reviewed and approved the initial ordinance, they requested that we take a look at it again and present to the Planning Commission this new recommendation, which is for a secondary residence. So the way in which that we will handle that is that the resident of Hawthorne who has a second residence will have to provide proof of residency in order for them to be able to rent their second dwelling. And we've made sure that we've updated the definitions to include that and keep the vacation rental definition intact as well. So this concludes my staff report, and based on the desire to provide additional opportunities for the short-term rental in Hawthorne, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt the resolution number 2020-07, which we have provided, recommending that the City Council approve the amendment to the zone amendment. And with that, I conclude, and if you have any questions.
Okay, does the Planning Commission have any questions for the staff? This is time for questions for staff only.
Through the chair, I do have a question, Commissioner Ortiz.
Go ahead.
Okay, so the staff report identifies, some of the reasons why this amendment is being taken up, but it doesn't identify one of the main reasons why initially the Planning Commission enacted the ordinance as it reads, and that's because we were concerned about reducing the rental housing stock. And so this proposed revision seems to ignore that concern. So by adding this revision, it seems like the rental stock or housing stock will definitely go down. I don't see, and maybe I guess the question would be if staff can explain that. And the second part to that question is, it was mentioned that enacting or revising the ordinance will allow for these residents of Hawthorne that have these secondary homes to generate more income. Now, if you have a secondary home, you can always rent the property, and that in itself generates income. Potentially not as much income as short-term rentals, but it doesn't have the effect of reducing the housing stock. So can staff address that?
Yes. So when staff presented the first amendment to the zoning code, which did not include the secondary residences, we did explain the reasoning why we limited vacation rentals in order to not reduce the housing stock. It appears that the City Council felt that by allowing only those residences who live in the city and who own second residences, it wouldn't be as large as if we opened it up to everyone. So my understanding is that that is the reasoning behind it.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
If I could also add, sorry, can you hear me? I muted myself. I also wanted to add that I think presumably some of these homes that we're talking about are simply vacation rentals, and they would use as a vacation rent. They would just be limited to 90 days. And so in an effort to allow people that to these homes that are probably not going to be in the housing stock because they're considered a secondary residence to the owners, they get to have a little bit more leeway and they could rent it for longer. But you are right. In some cases, you would want these secondary homes to be used as affordable housing to increase the housing stock. But as the Senior Plan Maharic mentioned, the desire of the council is to open this up a little more, not completely. We still have restrictions on vacation rentals, but to at least provide property owners that live in Hawthorne an opportunity to utilize those properties, not just as a vacation rental, as just a home share.
Yeah. So thank you for that clarification. So what limiting that property to 90 days for vacation rentals did is that financially it makes them more beneficial for the owner to rent the property versus keeping it off the market from the rental market and housing stock and doing the vacation rental for just 90 days. So that was part of the the rationale for allowing the up to only 90 days of the vacation rental. Does the city have staff done any type of projections on up to how many units in the city would the current ordinance as we previously recommended for approval would eliminate?
No.
We have not done an analysis. We would have to obtain the tax rolls and determine how many property owners actually live in the city who own second dwelling units.
And I'm not just talking about for the second. I'm not just talking about for the second for this specific amendment, but just cumulatively. As the ordinance stands now.
No, we did an analysis initially as to how many short-term rentals could potentially occur or are occurring already, but no, we have not done a further analysis, a more precise analysis.
Would you happen to have or recall the numbers of not what's occurring, but what could potentially occur?
There's not what can potentially occur. Unfortunately, I don't have that. The initial thing that we did was look through Airbnb, and there's at least anywhere from 60 to 100 in the city. that we know of, that are out there. But otherwise, no further analysis.
Okay. The reason why I ask is because by knowing the maximum amount of those units that could be short-term rentals, if we had that data, we could assess whether, obviously it won't be 100%, it would never be 100%, but we could assess, okay, what if 60 or 70% of those that are able to do that went ahead and did the short-term rentals, how much housing stock would be eliminated? And I think that would also serve to the council to either realize that adding more flexibility to the current ordinance would, what effect would it have essentially? Because my concern is that we're making these changes to the current ordinance or potential ordinance, and we really don't know what potential effect it could have on the city and the housing stock.
Could I make a suggestion? Because I think that it may be feasible to get a number to try to find out how many are basically eligible units. But another way to look at this is to say, okay, we don't want to decrease the housing stock so much, this unlimited amount that we don't even know the figure for. You could put a quota, you could put a certain number of applications or permits that are going to be issued for this particular type of use if you wanted to. That's another possibility. We talked about that a little bit at the very beginning of the ordinance, talking about just putting a cap. But we didn't go that route. The commission did not want to go that route. But maybe with this desire that we're getting from the city council to provide a little bit more leeway, maybe the compromise could be, okay, we could allow this subset of what would have been vacation rentals to be home sharing, but it's only a certain amount. It's only maybe, and it could be an arbitrary number, unfortunately. We'd have to do some research to see what we're talking about, but 20 or 25. So it wouldn't be so, such a big impact on the housing stock. That's something else we could do.
Yeah.
Through the chair,
Okay.
thank you.
You're gonna say something, Ryan?
Yeah. Just through the chair, I wanted to comment on what the suggestion you made, Melissa. I like that idea, but I do think before, like you said, before we move forward like that, we would need to do that research to know exactly how many units we're impacting, because an arbitrary number just doesn't seem like it's the most wise way for us to move forward. So I like that idea. I just think we should take the time for us to actually do that. Do you know how long it would take for us to get that number, or will we?
I was just going to ask the senior planner, Meherick, if she had an idea whether it is feasible and how long it would take.
I think it will take several weeks, and the issue is that I do have to speak to other staff, for instance, in our public works department. They are the ones who issue the addresses, so I need to check on that, and then talk to the assessor, so I have a better understanding of the numbers, and not knowing what the status is with the assessor's office due to the COVID-19 crisis. So it's going to take several weeks.
Yeah, that's understandable with what's going on. It'd be hard for us to get information. But just also a follow-up question with that: if we were to move to a quota-based system, is there any precedent for how often these residents would have to recertify that they still lived in the city or in the city limits, or how will we enforce the fact that the people who are renting these homes actually do live in the area?
Well, the ordinance requires them to come in for an annual permit, so it would happen every year. You'd have to, yeah, they have to certify every year.
I was thinking as far as getting the information for the property owners, that might be actually difficult for staff to do because we wouldn't know if those people are using it as their second home. Because sometimes, like the assessors, it'll show that address and then maybe a different mailing address, but it might just be maybe like a PO box or something like that. But yet they still live at that location. Um, I mean, it might be easier to do it through the new definition of if they own two properties, then we could probably search, how many properties have the same name. But then that also might be difficult because some properties might be under an LLC, so it might not show up. So there would be some difficulty in finding that. I mean, doing the quota would be, um, I guess, more, efficient, more easier to to manage and to find out. So trying to do all that research that might not even be possible.
That was my concern. That's why I was referring to senior planner to see if we, but then the number would be a little bit arbitrary. You have to just decide what we
Right.
think is the appropriate number.
Yeah. I also took a look at the city council meeting for March 10th, where they approved that ordinance. It sounded like they were a little bit confused about what short-term rentals were for and the term vacation rentals. So I think that kind of confused them on why we limited vacation rentals to 90 days, because they thought that we were only concerned about it creating like blight in the area or people weren't going to maintain the lots or things like that. But like Commissioner Ortez was saying, that we were mainly focused on just the housing stock, being lowered by the short-term rentals. If they're using it only for short-term rentals, then people can't, rent out those properties. And I think that if we do make any recommendations to City Council, that they know that that was our, intentions for limiting that 90 days for that. Um, and I mean, yeah, by allowing it for just people that currently have two homes in the city, that would be, probably a lower number than just allowing all vacation rentals to be um, for an extended amount of time. Um, and then I was also thinking about, because of this current emergency that we're in, it might be hard for these owners to rent out their properties. Um, so maybe instead of maybe doing the 90-day limit for the interim, maybe do it in reverse. Maybe allow for the extended um, unlimited time for maybe like a year or two. We do a trial on that to see how it would work, especially now, with all this, stuff going on in the city and all across the world. A lot of people are going to be, concerned with finances. Um, so this would, allow them at least some time if they can't get or it rented out to use it as vacation property. Um, and even now, as vacation properties might be hard for them to do that because not many people are traveling. So maybe having trying it out for a year or two without a cap on the 90 days, um, and then maybe going back to the 90 days if we have to, um, and then but keeping the definition as, um, yeah, maybe keeping the definition separate for the if they own a property currently in Hawthorne, that they can do the term rental. And that was all my questions.
Melissa, you're muted.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you. So your suggestion basically is that we have almost like a sunset. We allow everyone to be either property to be utilized on an unlimited basis, and have that sunset in 2 years. And then at that point, it would go back to being 90 days and unlimited for 90 days for vacation rentals and then unlimited for home sharing. Is that kind of what you were proposing? But, and also including everything as, also creating that new definition?
Yes.
Okay. Okay.
If I may, through the chair, Maria, do we have any statistics on the current vacancies in rentals, in homes and apartments in Hawthorne?
I don't have them in front of me. I do know that those are tracked through the census.
Yes.
So they would have those numbers. I know that our rental percentage is a little over 70% of rental property here in the city. Mm-hmm. So there's not a whole lot of owners. So the percentage of renters is high. But I don't have the statistics of vacancies right now.
Okay, because I mean, if we think about it from the perspective of how many vacancies we have currently, it might not affect the housing stock if we already have a lot of vacancies now. I mean, I personally don't have a problem with the amendment, and if we put a cap on it, I think that would make sense. But of course, I mean, with the rest of my fellow commissioners, whatever they decide on, I'd be okay with. But making it easier on the residents, I don't think it's a huge problem.
Commissioners, if I may, one of the things that the assessor also does for property owners is property owners typically will have a homeowner's exemption. So that indicates that that property owner actually lives on that property. So in terms of secondary homes, if that's one of the things that we can check in pretty quickly once they provide us with their address and what their secondary home is. And I just wanted to mention that.
Okay, does anyone else have any questions? Any of the staff for the Planning Commission have any other questions for the staff? Okay. And do me a favor, since I'm not able to see you all tonight, with the commissioners, when they get ready to speak, please give their names so I'm really positive of who's talking. Thank you. Okay, staff, is there any participation by members of the public for this public hearing item?
No, we did not receive any messages for this item, Chairman Smith.
Okay, thank you. Madam Secretary, are there any documents to place into the administrative record, such as late communications?
No, there are not.
Do any of my fellow commissioners have any final comments on this item?
Through the chair, this is Juan Ortiz. I do have a final comment. I have a rental property in the city of Hawthorne, secondary home that I rent, and so I'm pretty familiar with the rent prices in the city, here in Hawthorne and in the city of LA. And I know for a fact that trying to find a rental property is extremely hard for, especially for, if you're trying to pay a reasonable rental cost. So that's why I have such great concern for lowering the housing stock, even if it is just a couple more units or 20 units or whatever it is. Because I do know how difficult it is for people to find affordable housing right now. So that being my primary concern, I would not want to make a decision for this ordinance, for this amendment, without having actual data that we could rely on. So, you know, where I stand right now, I will not be supporting the amendment.
Through the chair, if I may, Melissa, if I can ask, would it be easier on staff and the city if we move to continue, or if someone actually put a motion and it was denied? Which one would be easier on the city?
I think it would make more sense, considering that what you really want is a little bit more research to be done to continue the item. That would make more sense. I would only make the motion if you are absolutely certain you don't want this and you don't want any additional research. And if the motion were to, well, either a motion to disapprove, that would be your message to us. A motion to approve that failed, we would also get that message. But you do want us to kind of to look into this a little bit further and bring you back some more information. Yeah, then I think it'd be better to continue this item. Now, I know it's going to be a couple of weeks. Senior Planner Meharry, did you think that the next meeting, do you, sorry guys, I'm ready. Do you think till the next Planning Commission it's enough time, or do you think we would need to just continue this and then we'll renotice the hearing?
I would feel more comfortable if we can renotice the hearing.
Okay.
That way, in case I'm unable to contact anyone else that I need to contact to gather the information, I want to make sure I have it and not come back to the commission saying, oh, we're still researching.
Okay, that's fair.
If that's okay.
Yeah, that's fine. It's just a matter of which motion you make, right? You make a motion to continue, or you make a motion to continue to a certain date. So it sounds like the right motion would be just the motion to continue this item, and that's fine. For further study, basically.
Right.
One last comment. I would appreciate my fellow commissioners' support on this. You know, it really is. I've been thinking a lot about this and the ordinance that we actually recommended for approval, and just not being able to put a potential number on what it already is concerns me, and I think it would be really helpful for the city and the city council to know that potential number. And like I was saying before, if things go as what a lot of people are planning with the stadium, where it's going to raise home values, it's going to increase cost of rent of renting in Inglewood, but also in the city of Hawthorne, it would be really good for us to know what the worst potential impact is with this ordinance that we passed. Not just for this amendment, but maybe for future amendments. So that's it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree with, this is Jason. I agree with Ortiz. It seems like some of my other fellow commissioners would like to receive some more data or more information to make a better decision. And, by allowing the vacation rentals to be rented out short term, will limit the amount of rental properties, therefore creating, a higher demand for rentals. And then the prices will increase or they definitely won't, go down because of the, more short-term rentals and less rental properties for long-term. So I do, agree with him on that. And the reason why we kind of had the 90-day was just, for in case, they're renting out long term and maybe they can't get somebody in right away, they could use it as a short term rental, just for like 90 days throughout the year. And that way they're not losing money on the property. Um, and so, especially if we make a decision, if that can be relayed to city council, to let them know what our thought process was for that 90 days. Um, and then just thinking about the homeowners that have these multiple properties that might not be, getting renters, because of all the job losses going on right now. And I mean, they might need some help, in the meantime. Um, and so that's why I was, suggesting that we, maybe allow for the short-term rentals with the sunset of like a year or two, for more than 90 days. But we can discuss that more later once we get the numbers, and then maybe put a cap on how many vacation um, rentals we would allow for the short term, as well. That way it'll kind of please both sides, the renters and the homeowners.
We can do that.
Okay. So if that's all the comments, then I will now formally close the public hearing on this item. Call on my fellow commissioners for a vote on the item. So do I have a motion? And is it a motion to continue or?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
So, I, Juan Ortiz, motion to continue the public hearing.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, who was that?
That was Jason.
Jason, thank you, Jason. Okay, will the secretary please call for the vote?
Yes. Chairperson Smith,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Alshanable,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Caraveo,
Yes.
Commissioner Richard.
Yes.
Great.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next item is Zone Text Amendment 2020 ZA02. Now is the time and place to open the public hearing to consider Zone Text Amendment number 2020 ZA02. Assistant City Attorney Melissa Crossways will present the staff report.
Good evening. Thank you, Commissioners. I will be presenting Zone Text Amendment 2020 ZA02. This is an amendment to Title 17, the zoning code, to allow staff to withhold applications under certain circumstances and to consider fines and zoning violations on properties when there are applications. The reason for this really is that staff had been facing some issues, some uncertainty with regard to applicants' projects that would come in that would have violations, they would have delinquencies, unpaid fines, so forth. I think I'm getting some background noise. Is that correct? You guys have background noise from me?
It's fine.
Yes.
Okay, my son is in the other room and I can hear him because the monitor's on. I forgot to turn it off. Sorry about that. Just raise your hand and let me know that you can't hear me. So staff had been faced with that problem that they didn't know what to do with these applications. In many cases, unfortunately, they would have to recommend denial, which would be costly, time consuming, but they had no other way to be able to enforce the issues, to deal with the code enforcement issues and to deal with delinquencies. So staff came up with this language that would provide explicit authority for staff to be able to withhold applications or take into consideration some of these problems with the properties. And I'm going to go through the changes to Title 17. You'll notice that there are other changes in this ordinance. There's changes to Title 15 and changes to Title 1. The planning commission has authority to make recommendations regarding Title 17 only. So all that's included for your reference as well. And I'll go over that as briefly as well. But most important is to go over the changes that are proposed to the zoning code. So the first change in language that we wanted to put in is to section 17.06.030. And that would state that the planning department would be allowed to refuse to accept any application for a permit or other entitlement from any person or project, for a project, property, building, or structure. And we're talking about, for example, CUP, talking about that kind of entitlement, for example, when the property, building, or structure has unpaid fines, liens, assessments.
Melissa, we can't hear you.
I think we might have lost.
Her phone.
I think we lost her.
I think she dropped her phone. She can rejoin, right?
Yeah, we'll wait for a minute. Log back in and do the password and all that. You can give us a minute and we'll have her rejoin.
I've let her know that we lost her completely, so hopefully she'll be dialing back in.
At the school, it took us exactly 2 weeks to get the hang of this. So yeah, this is our first meeting here, so it's understandable.
Right.
It seems like it's going to be the new norm, so.
I know, it's strange.
Okay, she said for us to please take a 5-minute break. Her computer turned off.
Okay.
So she has some, yeah. So if we can take a 5-minute break and give her an opportunity to join again.
Okay.
Commissioners, thank you.
If everybody can just stay on the cable channel, they will go to a break, and then once we're live, we'll start the meeting up. So please stay on. Thanks.
As the nation's doctor, I often get asked, what should I do if I think I might have coronavirus?
People who are sick should stay home. You don't go to an emergency room, you don't go to a clinic. You get on the phone and you ask for advice and instructions from your physician.
We don't want you to go into the ER or the doctor's office without talking to them first because you might spread coronavirus to someone else. Please visit coronavirus.gov for more information.
Melissa, you're good to go.
Okay, thank you. My apologies, commissioners. I had technical difficulties right in the middle of my presentation to you. Would anyone like me to restart, or would you like me to continue from where I left off?
Continue from where you left off.
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so we were going over the changes to Title 17. So the first would be language. I read it before, essentially to allow staff to make a decision of withholding an application. Instead of processing the application, if they feel that there are many issues with the property, they can withhold and choose to not process. This gives explicit authority for that. The other change, it's actually really just memorializing what authority is already given to staff. It states that the staff may take into consideration the fact that a person or property has been issued citations when the city is determining whether to grant a land use approval, and such citations are evidence the person has committed acts or the property has conditions that are not compatible with health and safety. We do that often as planning staff. We will recommend approval of a project for approval of the CUP, for example, but condition the project that certain code violations are eliminated. And we always have a condition that says that you cannot maintain your property in a manner that becomes a nuisance. So this is really just memorializing and making explicit what is already implicit, that as a power that or authority that staff holds. Together, we think that these two provide a good amount of flexibility to planning staff that are facing these issues and they don't know what to do and they don't want it to be costly for the applicants when they give us applications and we have to recommend denial, and also time consuming, going through the entire process only to not get an approval. And also, this is a way of encouraging that applicant to go ahead and take care of those delinquencies and to take care of the violations on their property. That's really the point of this, is to make sure that this is another way of enforcing our code. So that's what's included in Title 7. We also added a couple provisions to Title 1, and that's regarding admin sites, administrative citations. We basically said that you can withhold permits, entitlements, or licenses whenever there are admin penalties or costs that are outstanding. So we put that in its general language, and we also added some language to Title 15. This is really for the Building and Safety Department, but the language we added allows them to withhold permits and certificates of occupancy where plan checks and field inspections reveal that completion of a project will result in a zoning violation. So for example, they're proposing a use that's unpermitted. Well, this allows the director of building and safety to say, I'm not going to give you your C of O, your certificate of occupancy, because you have an unpermitted use. What can happen is they're given their certificates, their entitlements, and then code enforcement has to turn around and just continue to cite them. This would save resources by alerting the applicant to the fact that there may be a zoning violation, and they are not going to get their entitlements without correcting that particular violation if it can be corrected. It also states that a C of O, certificate of occupancy, will not be issued until all work that's required by, and I will note there's a small clerical error, a typo. It says all work required by the building and all other conditions. It should say building official. And so we'll go ahead and change that if this is approved tonight. That requires that before the C of O is given, all the other departments have been able to give direction, and that applicant has complied with those requirements. Trying to think of an example for you. One example would be a density bonus housing agreement. That's something that planning requires. We don't want to provide someone a certificate of occupancy, which is the last permit that they get. It's our last opportunity to be able to assert our authority and ask the applicant to take certain action. This would allow the building and safety director, the building official, to say, we're not going to give it to you until you comply with planning's requirements, or whatever department has placed a requirement on them. So that is, in sum, basically all of these provisions are giving another enforcement strategy to staff so that we can be able to deal with code enforcement, but with properties that have continuous code enforcement problems, where admin sites are not working, maybe even civil and criminal haven't worked. This could be an opportunity for us to get compliance. This hearing, this item was noticed on the paper April 2nd, and our SQL analysis is included in the staff report. If you have any questions, I'm happy to answer those questions for you, Commission. But this concludes my report.
Okay, does the Planning Commission have any questions for staff? This is the time for questions for staff only.
I have a question. Is this for any property, like commercial or residential?
It applies to any property.
Okay. And then, is it illegal to prohibit them from obtaining a business license if they're not?
Well, actually, it's funny that you asked this question, because if you look at some of the language that's included, it excludes business license, or essentially any license that's issued for revenue purposes. Because as you probably know, if it's for revenue purposes, it's not a permission to do anything. It's just the payment of a tax. So those types of licenses would be excluded from this. We would still be able to issue a business license, as we are required to do. You pay your tax, you get your business license.
Okay, but is it illegal for the city to, I guess, say that they can't get their business license if they're not, paying these fees and things like that?
I wouldn't say that it's illegal for the city, but generally speaking, there's no real authority with business licenses. There's no conditions that we put. It's not an entitlement process. It's just a tax. So the city would really not be able to do anything with an applicant. I wouldn't say it's illegal. There just isn't authority for us to do that.
So we can't say they have to stop, operating their business if they're not, paying the fees or bringing their property up to compliance.
No, we don't. What we do is we can refuse to issue a business license if they don't provide us the information that's required. I would have to check, but I think when there are delinquencies in a business license, so if you had your business beginning in 2018 and you haven't paid 2018 or 2019 and you come in 2020 and you want your license, we I believe we can refuse to give you the license at that point. But if there are other issues going on with the property, business license doesn't address that, doesn't deal with that.
Okay. And then for conducting like filming or movies, being filmed on your property, what type of permit would you need for that?
I think it's just a filming permit. There's a permitting process in our code. And I think that's the type of, it's a film permit.
Okay.
It was actually recently changed, so I can't speak to the details of that ordinance. I'd have to get back to you on that. But I would assume that, this is intending to give authority to withhold all types of permits. And unless it's for revenue purposes, and I'm fairly certain that a film permit is not simply for revenue, a film permit is for regulation. We want to make sure that it's safe filming and if liability issues are taken care of. I would presume that a film permit could be withheld if there are issues with the property.
Okay. Because if they're using the property only for filming, would they be able to consider that as their revenue?
If they're only using the property for filming, that's a really not complicated question, more complicated than one would think, because it's a matter of the use. So only using your property for filming, if that's your main use, that may not be allowed. But it's still not considered revenue raising. When we say revenue raising, it's the city side, whether it's for purposes of raising revenue for the city, not for the applicant. I hope that answers your question. Filming is a little bit tricky because we have had some issues with that. So.
But this ordinance would restrict them from obtaining a film permit if they aren't paying fees.
If they have fines, delinquencies, I would think, yes, I think so.
Okay. That's all of my questions.
Okay, is there anyone else that has any questions for staff? Okay, hearing none. Staff, is there any participation by members of the public for this public hearing item?
No, we did not receive any communication from the public on this item.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, are there any documents to place into the administrative record, such as late communications?
There are not.
Thank you. Do any of my fellow commissioners have any final comments on this item? Okay.
Jason has one. I was trying to see if we can actually put in there as one of the licensings or permits, the film permit as one of the permits that can be restricted if they're not paying their fees.
You mean explicitly putting it in there, or possibly?
Yeah, explicitly put in there.
This would be my suggestion. If you really have a concern about film permits, maybe what we can do is make changes to that section of the code that deals with permits, and saying in there explicitly that a film permit will not be given to you if you have delinquencies. Like I said, it hasn't changed, so there might be language in the film permitting ordinance that talks about that. But I would leave these sections that are included here as they are, because they're general and they cover everything and anything. If we start to add specifics to them, then there's a question of, do we have to add everything that could possibly be contemplated? And my suggestion is that you leave it as is, and we can look at the film permit ordinance to see if that can be changed.
Okay, yeah, understandable.
So I can look into that to see what we could do with that.
Okay. I will now formally close the public hearing on this item. Call on my fellow commissioners for a vote on the item. So do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve.
I'm sorry, who was that?
Second.
Is it Rula?
Who made the motion?
Rula,
Okay, thank you.
yes.
And who
And-
seconded?
Commissioner Ortiz will second that.
Okay, thank you. Will the secretary please call for the vote?
Chairperson Smith,
Yes.
Vice Chairperson Alshanable,
Yes.
Commissioner Ortiz,
Yes.
Commissioner Caraveo,
Yes.
Commissioner Richard.
Yes.
Okay, the resolution passes. Actually, I think I neglected to say that for the prior item. So I'm saying it now, that the motion to continue passed. And with this item, the motion to approve, or to adopt Planning Commission Resolution 2020-06, approving zone text amendment number 2020 ZA02, passed. 5-0.
Thank you. Now we will recess the Planning Commission, call back to order the Airport Zoning Commission. Airport Zoning Commission consent calendar. There are no items. Airport Zoning Commission new continued public hearings. There are no items. So now we'll call back to order the Planning Commission concurrently with the Airport Zoning Commission. Administrative items. There are none. So commissioners' reports. Do the commissioners have any report they would like to present to us?
I do, if I may. This is Rula, Commissioner Smith. With the COVID-19 situation that we have right now, I don't know if everybody else is the same, but in my case, since everyone is home, my son is home from San Diego, my daughter is not going to work anymore, the amount of trash that we are producing, I mean, it's not more per capita, it's just concentrated in my home, which makes once a week pickup of trash not enough. I don't know if other people are facing the same issue, and I was just wondering if we can, I mean, just know if others are facing the same issue, and if we can request from the public services to just during this time pick up trash twice a week instead of once a week.
Yeah, we can look into that. We can ask. This is very familiar what you're bringing to our attention. So I will take a look at that. And I will
Thank you so much.
see what we can do.
Thank you.
Okay, anyone else?
This is Jason. I was just, hoping everybody stays safe and, mentally, are okay and physically are okay, and all their you guys' families. I hope you guys are all doing well through this difficult time, and hopefully we can get back to normal sometime soon. I appreciate the city of Hawthorne for keeping us aware and updated on information. And then also, I'm not sure if you guys noticed that, they're not ticketing for parking on the street because of the, everybody staying at home. That's it. I just hope you guys all stay safe.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else?
I want to thank everybody for being available to do this meeting in a new format. And again, my apologies for just disappearing on everyone. I promise I will get better at this. So, but thank you everyone for your cooperation and your participation.
Thank
I'd
you
like-
for
Yeah,
orchestrating
I'd like to
everything.
thank all of the commissioners for participating tonight. A lot of good comments. And please be safe, wear your mask, wear your gloves when you go outside, and take care of your family, please.
Thank
So-
you.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief Ishii and Cable, for putting this together, for making this possible too.
Yes,
you.
thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Mhm.
So if
Thank
there,
you.
Good job.
there is nothing further from the commissioners, and the meeting will be adjourned at 7:15.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Okay, thank you.
Thank
everybody.
you. Good night.